You don't belong here. Get out. Bradley Thornton's finger stabbed toward the exit as he stepped directly into Amara Washington's path, his voice cutting through the boutique like a blade. The entire store froze. 911? I need the police. There's a suspicious black woman refusing to leave my store. Every customer stared in shock. Security cameras rolled. What happened next would expose the most dangerous assumption Bradley had ever made. The composed woman he just called the cops on wasn't backing down. She had a secret that would turn this humiliating moment into his worst nightmare. Within minutes, the man who thought he held all the power would be begging for mercy. This wasn't just shopping while black. This was about to become a lesson in how badly you can destroy your own life by judging the wrong person. The Grandview shopping district prided itself on being progressive. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Designer boutiques lined the corridors. Signs everywhere proclaimed, "Diversity welcome here," and "Community partnership certified." But pretty signs don't change ugly hearts. Amara Washington had walked these halls countless times, though today felt different. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being the only black face in expensive places. Her tailored blazer, designer handbag, and measured steps spoke of success, details that should have mattered but somehow never seemed to register with people like Bradley. She was here for one simple reason: finding the perfect anniversary gift for her husband. 15 years of marriage deserved something special, something that reflected how far they'd both come. The Cartier watch she'd spotted online would be perfect, elegant, timeless, exactly his style. Her phone buzzed again. Mayor's office flashed on the screen for the third time in 10 minutes. She declined the call, slipping the device back into her purse. Whatever crisis was brewing at City Hall could wait. This was her afternoon, her mission, her moment to focus on something purely personal. Bradley Thornton had managed Premier Jewelry for 15 years. 15 years of building what he called the right clientele. He knew quality when he saw it, or at least he thought he did. His definition of quality had very specific parameters that had earned him 3 discrimination complaints filed with corporate headquarters over the past 2 years. Each complaint had been quietly settled. Each settlement had taught Bradley one lesson: be more careful about witnesses. Today, he watched Amara through the store's mirrors, tracking her movement between display cases. She moved purposefully, examining pieces with the eye of someone who understood value. But Bradley saw something else entirely. He saw someone who didn't fit his mental image of who belonged in his store. The irony was suffocating. Behind the register, barely visible unless you looked closely, hung Premier Jewelry's Community Excellence Award, presented by the city government just 6 months ago for outstanding service to all residents. The mayor himself had handed Bradley that plaque, praising the store's commitment to treating every customer with dignity. If only Bradley had paid attention to who was standing behind that mayor during the ceremony. Amara selected the watch, a stunning piece worth $3,200. As she approached the counter, her wedding ring caught the light. It was elegant, understated, with a small detail that anyone paying attention might have recognized. The city seal etched discreetly into the band, a gift given only to the immediate families of elected officials. Bradley wasn't paying attention to details like that. He was too busy making assumptions. Other customers moved through the store. Mrs. Carter browsing earrings near the window, a young couple debating engagement rings, an elderly man examining cufflinks. Normal people living normal lives, about to witness something that would change how they saw their community forever. The store's security system captured everything from 6 different angles, high-definition cameras that Bradley had insisted on installing, proud of his sophisticated surveillance network. He loved showing customers and staff how the system worked, how it protected everyone, how nothing escaped its watchful eye. He never imagined those same cameras would soon be turned against him. Amara's phone buzzed again. This time, the caller ID read, James Emergency. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, then declined again. Her husband understood that some moments belonged to them, not to the city. Their anniversary dinner was in 3 hours. The watch would be perfect. As she reached the counter, Bradley positioned himself strategically. He'd done this dance before. The subtle intimidation, the elevated scrutiny, the message sent without words that some people needed to prove they belonged. What he didn't know was that the woman standing before him had spent years proving herself in rooms far more hostile than his store. She'd faced down city councils, negotiated with developers, and earned respect from people who initially dismissed her. She'd also learned something valuable. Dignity maintained in the face of disrespect has a power that bullies never understand, until it's too late. The afternoon was about to take a turn that would expose everything ugly hiding beneath Grandview's polished surface. And the man who thought he controlled the narrative was about to discover he'd picked the wrong woman to underestimate. Amara placed the Cartier watch on the counter with the gentle precision of someone who understood its value. The $3,200 price tag didn't make her blink. She'd researched the piece for weeks, knew it was perfect for James, knew they could easily afford it. Bradley's reaction was immediate and telling. Instead of the warm smile he'd given the white couple who'd just purchased a $900 necklace, his expression hardened into something cold and suspicious. "I'll need to see multiple forms of identification," he announced, his voice carrying across the store. Amara paused. In 15 years of luxury shopping, no one had ever made such a request for a simple credit card purchase. She glanced around, noting how other customers had stopped their browsing to listen. "Multiple forms?" she asked calmly. "For a credit card transaction?" "Store policy," Bradley replied, though the lie sat uncomfortably in the air. Mrs. Carter, still browsing near the window, looked up with obvious confusion. She'd bought a tennis bracelet here last month with just her credit card. No additional identification required. Amara opened her wallet with deliberate calm, producing her driver's license and American Express Black Card. Both items screamed financial stability. The license showed her address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. The credit card represented a level of wealth most people never achieved. Bradley examined both documents as if they were forgeries, turning them over repeatedly, holding them up to the light. His performance was theatrical, designed to humiliate, designed to make Amara feel small and unwelcome. "These look unusual," he said finally, though both items were clearly authentic. "Unusual how?" Amara's voice remained steady, professional. She'd dealt with far more sophisticated attempts at intimidation. Bradley picked up his phone, pretending to dial a verification number. The charade was obvious to everyone watching, but he didn't care. He wanted witnesses to see him being thorough, being careful, protecting his store from the kind of person who didn't belong here. "Yes, I need to verify a credit card," he said loudly into the phone, though anyone paying attention could see he'd dialed his own voicemail. "American Express Black Card. Very suspicious circumstances." The young couple shopping for engagement rings exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mrs. Carter had stopped pretending to browse, her phone discreetly recording the scene unfolding before her. She'd seen enough discrimination in her 70 years to recognize it immediately. After his fake phone call, Bradley leaned across the counter with manufactured authority. "I'm going to need you to explain exactly what this purchase is for." A watch this expensive raises questions. The question hung in the air like poison. Other customers stared in disbelief. Explain what the purchase was for? Since when did jewelry stores interrogate customers about their reasons for buying jewelry? "It's an anniversary gift for my husband," Amara replied, her dignity intact despite the public humiliation. "Anniversary gift," Bradley repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. "And you expect me to believe someone like you can afford a $3,000 watch for an anniversary gift?" "Someone like you." The words landed like a slap across every face in the store. Mrs. Carter's hand tightened around her phone. The young couple looked mortified. Even the elderly man by the cufflinks stopped what he was doing to stare. "Someone like me?" Amara asked quietly. Bradley doubled down, his prejudice now fully exposed. "Look, I don't know what kind of game you're running here, but this card could be stolen. These identification documents could be fake. I've seen it before." "You've seen what before exactly?" "People trying to use stolen credit cards to buy expensive jewelry. People who think they can walk into a store like mine and just take whatever they want." The accusation was clear. The racial profiling was undeniable. Every customer in the store understood exactly what Bradley was implying, and the silence was deafening. Amara's phone buzzed again. James's name appeared on the screen with a message. "Emergency City Council meeting moved up. Where are you? Need you here now." She glanced at the message, then looked back at Bradley, who had noticed the distraction and seemed to interpret it as guilt or nervousness. "Getting instructions from your accomplices?" he sneered. That was the moment Mrs. Carter stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "I've been shopping here for 10 years and I have never seen anyone treated this way. This woman has done absolutely nothing wrong." Bradley whirled around to face her. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm protecting all my customers by being thorough with suspicious transactions." "Suspicious?" Mrs. Carter's voice rose. "A well-dressed woman buying jewelry with her own credit card is suspicious? Since when?" Other customers began murmuring agreement. The young man shopping for engagement rings pulled out his own phone, joining Mrs. Carter in recording. The elderly customer moved closer, clearly upset by what he was witnessing. Bradley felt the room turning against him, but instead of backing down, he escalated. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he told Amara, pointing toward the exit with the same contemptuous gesture he'd used in the opening moments. "You're creating a disturbance." "I'm creating a disturbance?" Amara's composure finally showed the slightest crack. "By attempting to make a purchase. By refusing to accept that your business isn't wanted here. By causing a scene. By making my other customers uncomfortable." The accusation was so backwards, so divorced from reality, that Mrs. Carter actually gasped. "She's making us uncomfortable?" "You're the one making everyone uncomfortable." But Bradley was past caring about witnesses. He'd committed to his course of action, and his prejudice demanded he see it through. "Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I'm going to have to call the police." The threat hung in the air like a thunderclap. Call the police. On a woman whose only crime was shopping while black. Amara looked around the store, taking in the faces of the customers who had inadvertently become witnesses to this humiliating display. She saw anger in their eyes, but not directed at her. They were angry at what they were witnessing, angry at the injustice playing out before them. "You want to call the police?" she said slowly. "Because I attempted to buy jewelry with my own credit card. Because you're trespassing. Because you're disrupting my business. Because you don't belong here." Those words, "you don't belong here," would echo through the community for months to come. They would be quoted in newspaper articles, referenced in city council meetings, and remembered as the moment a bigot revealed his true nature to an audience he couldn't control. Bradley reached for his phone, his finger poised over the numbers that would summon police to remove a woman whose only offense was existing in his space while black. He had no idea that the woman he was about to have arrested was someone who could end his career with a single phone call. He had no idea that her husband was probably wondering why she hadn't responded to his emergency text. He had no idea that the security cameras he was so proud of were about to provide evidence that would destroy him. All he knew was that he'd drawn a line, and he was determined to enforce it. The phone call that would change everything was about to be made. Bradley's finger stabbed the phone with vindictive satisfaction as he dialed those 3 numbers that would seal his fate. 911? This is Bradley Thornton at Premier Jewelry in Grandview Shopping District. I need the police immediately. I have a suspicious black woman refusing to leave my store after I've asked her multiple times. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the phone. Sir, what has this person done? She's attempting to use what I believe is a stolen credit card, became belligerent when questioned, and is now trespassing after being asked to leave. She's creating a disturbance and making my customers uncomfortable. Every word was a lie, and every customer in the store knew it. Mrs. Carter's phone captured the entire conversation. The young couple stared in horror. The elderly veteran shook his head in disgust at what he was witnessing. Amara remained perfectly still during Bradley's performance, her hands folded calmly on the counter beside the watch she'd simply wanted to purchase. Her phone buzzed again. Another call from City Hall that she couldn't take while being publicly humiliated and falsely accused. Ma'am, I'm going to need the corporate customer service number for this store, she said quietly to a young sales associate who had emerged from the back room, drawn by the commotion. The associate, a college student named Sarah, looked terrified. She glanced between Bradley and Amara, clearly understanding that something very wrong was happening, but unsure how to respond. I'm not sure I'm allowed to. Give it to her, Mrs. Carter demanded sharply. This woman has every right to file a complaint about this treatment. Bradley ended his 911 call and turned his attention back to the situation. His chest puffed with the artificial authority of someone who thought he'd just solved a problem. The police are on their way. I suggest you leave before they arrive and this becomes even more unpleasant for you. I'm not going anywhere, Amara replied with quiet dignity. I came here to make a legitimate purchase, and I've done nothing wrong. Other customers began speaking up, their voices overlapping in a chorus of support and outrage. She's done nothing wrong. This is discrimination. I saw the whole thing. She was perfectly polite. But Bradley waved them off dismissively. You don't understand the full situation. You don't see what I see. This is exactly the kind of problem that stores like mine have to deal with every day. The problem he was referring to, of course, was black people with money trying to shop in his store. Amara's phone buzzed with a text message. The preview showed James emergency and the first few words, budget crisis escalating, city council in chaos. She declined to read the rest, slipping the phone back into her purse. Whatever crisis was brewing at City Hall would have to wait. She had her own crisis to manage now. The first police car arrived within 6 minutes, its lights flashing but sirens silent. Officers Martinez and Johnson stepped out, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Domestic disputes and traffic stops were challenging enough without walking into what was clearly a racially charged situation in an upscale shopping district. Bradley immediately approached them with his version of events, speaking quickly and urgently as if he were reporting a major crime. Officers, thank you for coming so quickly. This woman has been attempting to use fraudulent identification and credit cards. When I questioned her, she became hostile and refused to leave when asked. Officer Martinez, a 10-year veteran with sharp eyes and good instincts, looked around the scene. He noted the expensive store, the well-dressed customers, the woman in question standing calmly by the counter with perfect posture and no signs of agitation. Something didn't add up. Ma'am, he said to Amara, can I see your identification, please? Amara produced her driver's license and credit card again, handing them over without drama or complaint. Officer Martinez examined both documents carefully, noting the high-end neighborhood address, the authentic security features, the perfect condition of both items. These look legitimate to me, he said to his partner, Officer Johnson, who nodded in agreement. Of course they look legitimate, Bradley interrupted. These people are getting very sophisticated with their forgeries. That's exactly why we need to be extra careful. Officer Martinez raised an eyebrow at the phrase, these people, and exchanged a meaningful glance with his partner. They'd both been to sensitivity training. They both knew a racial profile when they heard one. Sir, Officer Martinez said to Bradley, What specifically made you think these documents were fraudulent? Bradley's answer revealed everything. Well, look at her. Look at what she's trying to buy. It just doesn't add up. Look at her. The words hung in the air like an admission of guilt. Officer Martinez had been wondering if this was a legitimate fraud case or a discrimination complaint. Bradley had just answered that question definitively. Meanwhile, Mrs. Carter continued recording, capturing every exchange, every facial expression, every moment of this spectacular display of prejudice meeting the justice system. The footage would soon become evidence in ways that Bradley couldn't imagine. Officer Johnson stepped closer to Amara, noting her calm demeanor, her expensive clothing, her professional bearing. "Ma'am, is there someone you'd like us to contact?" Family members, or... Before Amara could answer, another police car pulled into the parking lot. The shift supervisor had decided this situation needed additional oversight. Sergeant Williams stepped out of his patrol car, took one look at the scene, and immediately recognized something that would change everything. He recognized the woman standing at the center of this mess. His face went pale as he walked toward the group, his mind racing through the implications of what he was seeing. "Mrs. Washington," he called out, his voice carrying a mix of confusion and growing alarm. "What's going on here?" The moment those words left his mouth, Bradley's confident expression began to crack. The name Mrs. Washington cut through the tension like a blade through silk. Bradley's confident expression faltered for the first time, his eyes darting between Sergeant Williams and Amara with the first flicker of uncertainty he'd shown all afternoon. "Sergeant Williams," Amara replied with evident relief, her professional composure intact despite the ordeal. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I came here to purchase an anniversary gift, and this gentleman has accused me of credit card fraud and called the police." Williams approached the group with growing concern, his 20-year career giving him instant read on the situation. He'd worked security detail for city events, had seen Amara Washington dozens of times at official functions. More importantly, he knew exactly who she was married to. "Ma'am, are you injured? Has anyone threatened you?" His questions were direct, professional, and loaded with implications that made Officer Martinez straighten his posture. "I'm fine, Sergeant. Just disappointed that a simple shopping trip has escalated this far." Bradley tried to reassert control, stepping forward with forced authority. "Officers, I don't know who this woman claims to be, but she was attempting to use suspicious identification and became belligerent when questioned. I had every right to." "Suspicious identification?" Sergeant Williams cut him off, his voice carrying the edge of someone who'd just heard something unbelievable. "Did you verify these documents?" "Well, They looked unusual, and someone like her trying to buy expensive jewelry raises obvious questions about..." "Someone like her." Williams's tone went ice cold. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Before Bradley could dig his hole deeper, the sound of screeching tires announced another arrival. A black BMW sedan pulled up with urgent precision, and a tall, well-dressed black man stepped out, moving with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to command. James Washington had left an emergency city council session the moment he'd received Amara's text. "Situation at Premier Jewelry. Need you here now." The mayor surveyed the scene with sharp eyes. Police cars, his wife surrounded by officers, store customers with phones out recording everything. His expression shifted from concern to barely controlled anger as he pieced together what had obviously happened. "Amara," he said, reaching her side in 3 quick strides, "are you all right?" "What's going on here?" The moment he spoke, every police officer snapped to attention. Officer Martinez and Johnson immediately recognized the mayor they'd seen on television, at community events, at police department ceremonies. Sergeant Williams stepped forward with obvious respect. "Mayor Washington, sir. We responded to a call about a disturbance. Your wife was..." "My wife was what?" James Washington's voice carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to getting straight answers to direct questions. Bradley watched this exchange with growing horror, the pieces finally falling into place. The mayor. Mayor Washington. The woman he'd just humiliated, accused of fraud, and had arrested was the mayor's wife, the first lady of his city. The woman whose husband controlled city contracts, business licenses, and could make or break any retail establishment in the district with a single policy change. His face went ashen, then pale, then completely white as the full magnitude of his mistake hit him like a freight train. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding," he stammered, his voice suddenly small and desperate. "If I had known who she was..." "If you had known who she was?" James Washington turned his full attention to Bradley for the first time, and the store manager seemed to shrink under his gaze. "Are you suggesting that her treatment should depend on who she's married to rather than basic human decency?" Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Mayor Washington, I witnessed the entire incident. Your wife conducted herself with perfect dignity while this man subjected her to public humiliation and racial profiling." The elderly veteran nodded emphatically. "Worst display of prejudice I've seen in years. Your wife never raised her voice, never caused any disturbance. This manager created the entire situation." James Washington's phone buzzed with notifications. The story was already hitting social media. Videos from multiple angles were being uploaded with hashtags like #shoppingwhileblack and #mayorswife. The incident was going viral in real time. "Officers," the mayor said quietly, "I want every piece of security footage from this store preserved as evidence. I want witness statements from every customer present, and I want a full report on my desk first thing tomorrow morning." "Yes, sir," Sergeant Williams replied immediately. "We'll handle everything properly." Bradley tried desperately to salvage the situation, his prejudice now replaced by pure panic. "Mayor Washington, please, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. If I had realized, your wife is always welcome in my store. Always. This was just a miscommunication." "A miscommunication?" Amara spoke for the first time since her husband's arrival, her voice carrying steel beneath silk. "You told me I didn't belong here. You accused me of credit card fraud. You called the police and falsely reported me as a criminal. Which part was miscommunication?" The crowd that had gathered, customers, passers-by, people drawn by the police cars, began murmuring as they recognized the mayor and realized what they were witnessing. Phones appeared everywhere, capturing Bradley's humiliation from every angle. James Washington pulled out his own phone and made a call that everyone could hear. "Sarah, it's James. I need you to pull our city contracts with Premier Jewelry immediately." "Yes, all of them. We'll be reviewing our vendor relationships in light of recent events." Bradley's knees nearly buckled. The city contracts represented nearly 30% of his store's annual revenue. Corporate gifts, employee recognition awards, official ceremonies. Losing those contracts would be catastrophic. "Please," he begged, his voice cracking, "please don't punish the entire store for my mistake." "I was just trying to protect..." "Protect what?" James Washington asked coldly. "Protect your store from a well-dressed woman making a legitimate purchase? Protect your customers from seeing a black woman treated with basic respect?" The mayor's phone rang. Channel 7 News appeared on the caller ID. Then Channel 4. Then the city paper. The story was exploding across social media faster than wildfire. Bradley realized with sickening clarity that his career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His prejudice had been exposed to the entire city, captured on video from multiple angles, and he'd chosen the worst possible target for his discrimination. The woman he'd tried to humiliate with his assumptions about who belonged in his store was someone who could and would hold him accountable in ways he'd never imagined. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd been completely obliterated. Mayor Washington's first action wasn't revenge, it was preservation of evidence. Sergeant Williams, I need every security camera in this store secured immediately. Nothing gets deleted, nothing gets modified. This is now a matter of public record. Already on it, sir, Williams replied, approaching the store's security office with purpose. We'll need the master recordings from all angles. Bradley watched in growing panic as his own surveillance system, the cameras he'd been so proud of, the high-definition network he'd bragged about to customers, became the instrument of his destruction. Every angle of his humiliation of Amara Washington was captured in crystal clarity. Mrs. Carter stepped forward, her phone still recording. Mayor Washington, I have everything on video from the moment your wife approached the counter. This man's behavior was absolutely disgraceful. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. We'll need that footage for the investigation. James Washington's voice remained professionally calm, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. Officers, I want witness statements from every person who observed this incident. The young couple who'd been shopping for engagement rings approached nervously. Sir, we saw everything, the woman said. Your wife was nothing but polite and professional. That manager was completely out of line. She did absolutely nothing to provoke this, her fiancé added. We couldn't believe what we were watching. Bradley tried one more desperate attempt at damage control. Please, everyone, let's just calm down. This has all been blown out of proportion. Mrs. Washington, surely we can resolve this privately, professionally. Privately? Amara's voice cut through his pleading like ice. You made this very public when you announced to your entire store that people like me don't belong here. You made it public when you called 911 and falsely reported me as a criminal. There's nothing private about public humiliation. James Washington's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Regional Manager, Premier Jewelry Corporate. Word was traveling up the corporate chain faster than Bradley could process. Mr. Washington? This is Sarah Kim, Regional Manager for Premier Jewelry. I'm calling about an incident at one of our locations. I'm en route now. Can you please stay so we can address this situation immediately? We'll be here, the mayor replied tersely. Bradley's face went even paler, if that was possible. Sarah Kim was his direct supervisor, the woman who controlled his employment, his future, his entire career. She was driving here personally, which meant corporate headquarters already knew about the viral videos spreading across social media. Within 20 minutes, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up outside the store. Sarah Kim emerged like a woman on a mission, her expression grim as she took in the scene. Police cars, crowds of people with phones, news vans already arriving as word spread through the city. She walked directly to Mayor Washington, extending her hand with obvious respect. Mayor Washington, I'm Sarah Kim. I cannot express how horrified I am by what I've been told happened here today. Ms. Kim, I appreciate you coming so quickly. This situation has exposed some serious problems that need immediate attention. Sarah Kim turned to Bradley, her expression cold as Arctic wind. Bradley, my office, now. As they disappeared into the store's back office, the crowd outside continued growing. Local news crews set up equipment. Customers from other stores gathered to see what was happening. Social media exploded with hashtags and outrage. Inside the office, Sarah Kim pulled up the security footage on her laptop, her face growing darker with each passing moment. The videos showed everything. Bradley's suspicious scrutiny, his fake phone call, his escalating accusations, his public humiliation of a customer whose only crime was shopping while black. 15 years, she said quietly. 15 years you've worked for this company, and this is how you represent us. Sarah, please, if I had known who she was, if you had known who she was. Kim's voice rose sharply. Bradley, do you hear yourself? Are you saying this behavior would be acceptable if directed at someone without political connections? Bradley opened his mouth to respond, but Kim wasn't finished. I have 3 formal discrimination complaints against you in my files, Bradley. 3 separate incidents where customers reported feeling unwelcome, profiled, treated differently because of their race. Each time, the corporation settled quietly to avoid publicity. Each time, you promised this would never happen again. Those were misunderstandings. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Kim slammed her laptop shut. This was you on camera telling a black woman she doesn't belong in our store. This was you falsely accusing a customer of fraud. This was you calling the police on someone whose only offense was attempting to make a purchase. Outside the office, the investigation continued. Sergeant Williams interviewed every witness, documenting a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. Officer Martinez reviewed the security footage, noting how Amara's demeanor remained calm and professional throughout the entire ordeal. The elderly veteran who'd witnessed everything approached Mayor Washington. "Sir, I served this country for 30 years. I've seen discrimination, and I've seen dignity under fire. Your wife displayed the kind of grace under pressure that would make any husband proud." "Thank you for saying that," James replied. "And thank you for speaking up when it mattered." Mrs. Carter had taken it upon herself to coordinate with other witnesses, ensuring everyone's contact information was available for the investigation. "Mayor Washington, I want you to know that this doesn't represent our community. Most of us were horrified by what we witnessed." The store's young sales associate, Sarah, approached tentatively. "Mr. Mayor, sir, I just want you to know that a lot of us who work here have been uncomfortable with Mr. Bradley's behavior for a long time, but we didn't know how to report it, and we were afraid of losing our jobs." This revelation added another layer to the investigation. Corporate would need to examine not just Bradley's actions, but the culture of fear he'd apparently created among his own staff. Back in the office, Sarah Kim was reviewing Bradley's personnel file on her phone, reading corporate policy violations that painted a picture of an employee who'd been protected too long by quiet settlements and internal warnings. "The diversity training you were required to complete last year, you never finished it. The customer service workshops designed to address previous complaints, you attended 1 session out of 6. The cultural sensitivity seminar that was mandatory for all management staff, you requested an exemption." Bradley had no response. Each violation Kim cited was documented, time-stamped, part of a pattern that could no longer be ignored. "You're suspended immediately pending a full investigation," Kim announced. "Security will escort you out. You're not to return to any company property while this investigation is ongoing." "Sarah, please, I have a family, a mortgage." "You should have thought about your family before you decided to publicly humiliate the mayor's wife on camera," Kim replied coldly. "You should have considered your mortgage before you turned our store into a viral symbol of discrimination." When they emerged from the office, the scene outside had grown even more chaotic. News crews from 3 local stations had arrived. A reporter was interviewing Mrs. Carter about what she'd witnessed. Another crew was setting up for a live broadcast. Sarah Kim approached Mayor Washington with obvious contrition. "Sir, on behalf of Premier Jewelry Corporate, I want to offer our sincerest apologies. This behavior is completely contrary to our company values and policies." "I appreciate that, Ms. Kim. But apologies aren't enough. This incident has revealed systemic problems that need systemic solutions." Kim nodded emphatically. "Absolutely. We're implementing immediate changes. Mandatory bias training for all staff, revised hiring practices, new reporting mechanisms for discrimination complaints, and regular corporate oversight of all locations." "That's a start," James Washington replied. "But the real test will be whether these changes stick after the cameras leave." As Bradley was escorted out of the store by security, he walked past the crowd that had gathered to witness his downfall. Phones captured his face, his humiliation, his complete reversal of fortune. The man who'd wielded imaginary power over who belonged in his store was now being expelled from it himself. The irony was perfect, and everyone present understood it completely. Amara Washington finally spoke to the gathered crowd, her voice carrying the dignity that had never wavered throughout this ordeal. "What happened here today shouldn't happen to anyone, anywhere. But I'm grateful that it happened in front of witnesses who cared enough to speak up. That's what community means, standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." The crowd erupted in applause, but Amara raised her hand for quiet. This isn't about me or my husband's position or corporate settlements. This is about basic human dignity and the right of every person to be treated with respect regardless of their appearance or background. Mrs. Carter wiped tears from her eyes as she listened. The young couple held hands, moved by witnessing both hatred and grace in the same afternoon. The veteran stood at attention, recognizing true leadership when he heard it. As the news crews prepared their reports and social media continued exploding with outrage and support, one thing was clear. Bradley's moment of prejudice had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. His attempt to humiliate had instead revealed the dignity of his target and the ugliness of his own heart. The investigation would continue, the corporate changes would be implemented, and the legal consequences would follow. But the most important outcome was already visible in the faces of everyone who'd witnessed this confrontation. A community reminded that discrimination has consequences and that standing up to prejudice still matters. Justice, it turned out, sometimes came with cameras rolling and the whole world watching. 1 week later, the corporate investigation concluded with swift and decisive action. Sarah Kim sat in her regional office, reviewing the final report that would end Bradley Thornton's career permanently. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable, she announced during a conference call with corporate headquarters and legal counsel. Security footage, witness statements, social media documentation, and a history of previous complaints create a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. The decision was unanimous. Bradley Thornton was terminated immediately for gross violation of company policy, discrimination, and creating a hostile environment for both customers and staff. The termination letter, which would soon be read aloud at a city council meeting, stated clearly, Premier Jewelry maintains a zero-tolerance policy regarding discrimination. Mr. Thornton's actions were reprehensible, contrary to our company values, and caused immeasurable damage to our reputation and community standing. But corporate accountability was just the beginning. Mayor Washington used the incident as a catalyst for comprehensive reform. The City Council, meeting in an emergency session, voted unanimously to strengthen anti-discrimination ordinances with real teeth, mandatory bias training for all businesses holding city contracts, independent complaint review boards, and financial penalties for establishments found guilty of discriminatory practices. This incident exposed gaps in our system that allowed prejudice to flourish unchecked, Mayor Washington announced at the packed council meeting. We're implementing changes that ensure this never happens again to anyone in our community. The reforms were swift and comprehensive. Every business with city contracts would undergo quarterly discrimination training. Anonymous reporting systems were established with direct lines to the Civil Rights Commission. Most importantly, discrimination complaints would be handled by independent investigators, not internal corporate committees. Mrs. Carter became an unlikely hero of the story, her video footage serving as crucial evidence in the corporate investigation. More than that, she used her experience to launch a community watch program specifically focused on documenting and reporting discrimination in public spaces. I've lived through enough injustice to recognize it immediately, she told a packed community center meeting. But I've also lived long enough to know that staying silent makes you complicit. We all have phones. We all have voices. We all have the power to stand up. Her program trained volunteers to safely document discrimination incidents, connect victims with legal resources, and create a network of community accountability that extended far beyond corporate policies. The store itself underwent dramatic changes. New management implemented comprehensive bias training for all staff. Sarah, the young sales associate who'd been afraid to speak up, was promoted to assistant manager after revealing how Bradley's intimidation had silenced employee concerns for years. The new policies make it safe to report problems, she explained during a local news follow-up story. Everyone deserves to feel comfortable shopping here, and everyone who works here deserves to feel safe doing the right thing. 3 months after the incident, Premier Jewelry hosted a community reconciliation event, inviting local leaders, customers, and civil rights advocates to see their transformation firsthand. The store's sales had initially plummeted after viral videos showed Bradley's discrimination, but had recovered as the community recognized genuine change. Most importantly, the incident sparked conversations throughout the city about unconscious bias, systemic discrimination, and the responsibility of bystanders to intervene when they witness injustice. Local churches organized discussion groups. Schools incorporated the incident into social studies curricula. Business associations mandated sensitivity training that went beyond legal compliance to address the underlying prejudices that create hostile environments. The ripple effects extended beyond policy changes to cultural shifts. Restaurant servers found themselves more conscious of how they treated customers of different races. Retail workers questioned their own assumptions about who belonged in their stores. Even ordinary citizens became more willing to speak up when they witnessed discrimination. As for Amara and James Washington, they finally celebrated their anniversary properly. The Cartier watch, purchased from a different jeweler, became more than just a gift. It became a symbol of dignity maintained under pressure, of grace triumphing over hatred, of a community's capacity for growth and change. The most powerful moment came during the mayor's annual State of the City address, when Amara joined him on stage to present the first annual Community Courage Awards to Mrs. Carter, the young couple who'd testified as witnesses, and the veteran who'd spoken up for justice. Change doesn't happen in corporate boardrooms or city council chambers, Amara told the packed auditorium. Change happens when ordinary people decide that staying silent is no longer an option. Change happens when we choose dignity over convenience, courage over comfort. The audience erupted in sustained applause, but the real victory was visible in faces throughout the crowd, a community that had confronted its ugliest impulses and chosen to become better. Bradley Thornton's moment of prejudice had backfired completely, creating the very change he'd tried to prevent. A more inclusive, more accountable, more just community where everyone truly belonged. Justice served, lessons learned, progress made. The system had worked, but only because people made it work. 6 months later, the transformation was complete and undeniable. Premier Jewelry had become a model for inclusive business practices, hosting diversity workshops and mentoring other retailers struggling with similar issues. The Community Watch program Mrs. Carter launched had expanded to 12 neighboring cities, creating a network of accountability that spanned the entire metropolitan area. But the most meaningful change was personal. Amara and James Washington finally had their perfect anniversary celebration. Not just the dinner they'd planned, but the knowledge that their experience had created lasting change for countless others who might have faced similar discrimination. The Cartier watch, purchased from a jeweler who treated every customer with equal respect, kept perfect time and carried perfect meaning. Each glance at its face reminded them that dignity maintained under pressure has power beyond imagination. The store itself told the story of redemption through action rather than words. New staff training programs, diverse hiring practices, community partnerships with local civil rights organizations. Most importantly, a culture where speaking up for what's right was celebrated rather than feared. Bradley Thornton never found work in retail again. His viral humiliation followed him to every job interview, every background check, every Google search of his name. The lesson was harsh but clear. Actions have consequences, and some mistakes can't be undone. But this story isn't about punishment. It's about progress. It's about communities that refuse to accept discrimination as normal. It's about individuals who choose courage over comfort when witnessing injustice. It's about systems that actually work when people demand accountability. Mrs. Carter, now 71, speaks at universities about the power of bearing witness. "I survived the Cultural Revolution by staying silent," she tells packed auditoriums. "But I chose to thrive in America by speaking up. Every one of you has that choice. The young couple whose engagement ring shopping became an education in civil rights? They got married in a ceremony that celebrated not just their love, but their commitment to building a more just world for their future children. The veteran who spoke up for Amara now volunteers with organizations supporting discrimination victims. I didn't serve my country for 30 years to watch fellow Americans get treated like second-class citizens, he explains to anyone who will listen. The statistics tell the story. Discrimination complaints in the city dropped by 60% as businesses realized they were being watched, documented, and held accountable. Anonymous reporting increased by 300% as people found safe ways to report problems. But numbers don't capture the human impact. The black teenagers who now shop without fear. The elderly immigrants who feel welcome in stores that once ignored them. The LGBTQ+ customers who find acceptance instead of hostility. This transformation happened because ordinary people decided that staying silent was no longer acceptable. It happened because witnesses became advocates. It happened because a community chose growth over comfort. The lesson is simple but profound. Your voice matters. Your phone can document injustice. Your courage can create change. Your actions can transform communities. Have you witnessed discrimination and stayed silent? Have you seen injustice and looked away? Have you watched someone being treated unfairly and chosen convenience over courage? Every day presents opportunities to stand up, speak out, and make a difference. Every interaction is a chance to build the kind of community where everyone belongs. What will you choose the next time you see someone being treated unfairly? Will you be another silent witness, or will you be part of the solution? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about times you've witnessed discrimination and what you did about it. If this story opened your eyes or changed your perspective, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and the power of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Remember, change doesn't happen in boardrooms or government offices. Change happens when people like you decide that enough is enough. What will your moment look like?
At Black Voices Uncut, we don't polish away the pain or water down the message. We tell it like it is because the truth deserves nothing less. If today's story spoke to you, click like, join the conversation in the comments, and subscribe so you'll be here for the next Uncut Voice.
People like you need to remember their place. This isn't some diversity charity. You're here to follow orders, not give them. The open plan office falls silent as Trevor Matthews' voice cuts through the air like a whip. Every head turns toward the sound, then, quickly away, eyes downcast, bodies stiff with uncomfortable recognition of what's happening. Trevor, 54 and perpetually dressed in designer suits that emphasize his executive position, stands over Nicholas Turner's desk, his face flushed with anger. Nicholas remains perfectly still, the public humiliation burning across his face as colleagues pretend to focus on their screens. His hands rest flat on his proposal document, the one Trevor now taps with a dismissive finger. Did you honestly think the executive team wants to hear suggestions from someone who's barely been here 2 weeks? Trevor's voice drips with contempt. Your Harvard degree. We all know how you people get those these days. Affirmative action handouts. A few gasps punctuate the silence. Nicholas's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. You're nothing but a quota checkbox with an attitude problem, Trevor continues, leaning closer. Do I make myself clear, or should I use smaller words? Nicholas straightens his tie, his eyes never leaving Trevor's. Crystal clear. I know exactly what my place is. What Nicholas knows that Trevor doesn't will shatter his entire world. 2 weeks earlier, Nicholas Turner arrives at Westfield Industries headquarters with purposeful steps. At 32, he carries himself with quiet confidence, 2 advanced degrees and a stellar career trajectory evident in his bearing, if not explicitly stated. His tailored navy suit fits perfectly, and the leather portfolio under his arm contains meticulous notes about the company's current marketing strategies. He's prepared, he's qualified, and he's about to begin a mission only 2 people in the building know about. The HR director, Elaine Peterson, greets him with a warm handshake. Welcome to Westfield, Mr. Turner. We're thrilled to have someone of your caliber joining the marketing team. Her smile is genuine, her eyes knowing. She's one of the two people aware of Nicholas's true identity. "Thank you for the opportunity," Nicholas responds. "I'm looking forward to contributing to the team." What she knows, what only she and CEO Richard Westfield know, is that Nicholas Turner is actually Nicholas Westfield Turner, the CEO's son. His application, interview process, and hiring have been conducted under strict confidentiality. His connection to the CEO deliberately omitted from all paperwork. Nicholas could have walked straight into an executive position. Instead, he chose this path to experience the company from the ground up, to test the culture his father has been hearing troubling reports about. It's an assessment no consulting firm could provide with the same authenticity. Elaine escorts Nicholas to the marketing department, where Trevor Matthews waits with visible impatience. "This is your new senior strategist," Elaine introduces, "Nicholas Turner." Trevor barely glances at the resume Elaine hands him. His eyes flick over Nicholas, lingering just a moment too long on his face. "Marketing is on the 3rd floor," Trevor says with a slight frown. "Are you sure you're in the right department?" Nicholas has an MBA from Harvard and a master's in communication. His credentials are exceptional, Elaine interjects, her tone professional but firm. Trevor's expression shifts to something less overt but no less dismissive. "Right. Well, we'll find something for him to do." Throughout the day, the pattern becomes clear. Nicholas is assigned a desk in the far corner, away from the team, despite several empty workstations near the collaborative space. When introduced to colleagues, Trevor emphasizes that Nicholas is new and will be starting with basic tasks, despite his senior strategist title. The contrast becomes stark when another new hire arrives that afternoon. Bradley Wilson, white, male, with less experience than Nicholas. Trevor personally gives Bradley an office tour, introduces him warmly to everyone as our new creative force, and immediately includes him in an upcoming project discussion. That evening, Nicholas sits in his apartment, meticulously documenting the day's interactions in a private journal. His phone rings. "Nicholas, how was your first day?" Richard Westfield's voice carries the weight of both CEO and concerned father. "I'm in," Nicholas replies simply, "and you were right to be concerned." Trevor has no idea the diversity hire he's dismissing is actually heir to the entire company. Over the next week, Nicholas establishes himself as both competent and congenial, despite Trevor's limitations on his role. He completes assigned basic tasks with exceptional speed and precision, then quietly assists struggling teammates. His analytical insights prove valuable even in casual conversations, and several colleagues begin seeking his input unofficially. The team's growing respect for Nicholas is evident in everything except their official interactions, where Trevor's authority still dictates the hierarchy. No one challenges this established order. Wednesday morning's weekly strategy meeting changes that dynamic. The marketing team gathers in the glass-walled conference room overlooking the city. Trevor stands at the head of the table, projecting slides of a new campaign for Westfield's flagship product line. "As you can see, we're positioning for the luxury demographic with this approach," Trevor explains, gesturing to a mock-up that features celebrities and exclusive venues. "The aspirational angle has always worked for us." Nicholas studies the presentation, noting several critical flaws in the strategy. The room grows uncomfortable as Trevor's explanation contradicts recent market research. Several colleagues shift in their seats, eyes darting to each other, but no one speaks. Nicholas raises his hand. When Trevor reluctantly acknowledges him, Nicholas speaks in a measured, respectful tone. "The research from last quarter suggests luxury positioning is actually alienating our core demographic," Nicholas says. "The data shows our most loyal customers value innovation and reliability over status. We might be creating an unnecessary barrier with this approach." Trevor's face flushes slightly. That's an interesting perspective from someone who's barely unpacked his desk. "I've reviewed all the company's market research for the past 3 years, Nicholas responds evenly. "The numbers consistently show, maybe at your previous to smaller companies, that approach worked," Trevor interrupts, his emphasis making it clear what he thinks of Nicholas's prior experience. But here at Westfield, we operate at a different level. The tension in the room thickens. Nicholas remains composed as he pulls up market data on his tablet and places it on the table. With respect, the data doesn't support the luxury positioning. Our strongest growth segment is actually middle-income professionals who choose our products for functionality. We're risking millions on a campaign that targets the wrong audience. Trevor's knuckles whiten around his marker. I don't need a lecture from someone I hired to handle basic analytics. Know your role here. After the meeting, Aisha Johnson, the team's research analyst, approaches Nicholas in the break room.
That was brave,
She says quietly, glancing around to ensure they're alone.
Just be careful. Trevor's been here 20 years. He's friends with the board. He does this to anyone he sees as a threat, especially...
She doesn't finish the sentence. Nicholas nods, understanding.
Thanks for the warning, but I've dealt with people like Trevor before.
That evening, Nicholas composes a carefully worded email to Trevor, requesting to lead a small project based on his alternative strategy. The email is professional, data-driven, and respectful. He copies the entire team. The response Nicholas receives tomorrow will ignite a conflict neither man can walk away from. The marketing department buzzes with quiet energy the following morning. Nicholas's email sits in everyone's inbox, a professional request backed by impressive analytics that can't be easily dismissed. Several team members shoot Nicholas subtle nods of approval as he settles at his desk. At precisely 9:17 a.m., Trevor emerges from his office. His face betrays nothing as he walks directly to Nicholas's desk. My office, now. The words fall like stones. Nicholas follows Trevor into the glass-encased office. Trevor closes the door and pulls the blinds, an unusual move that draws curious glances from the team outside. Trevor doesn't sit. Instead, he stands behind his desk, using the height difference to establish dominance as Nicholas takes the visitor's chair. This, Trevor slaps a printed copy of Nicholas's email on the desk, is completely inappropriate. Nicholas maintains neutral eye contact. I believe my suggestion has merit based on the data. This isn't about data, Trevor snaps. This is about chain of command. You don't get to decide your projects. You don't get to copy the entire team on communications that should be private. You don't get to undermine my authority. That wasn't my intention, Nicholas responds calmly. I simply thought... Your qualifications? Trevor interrupts, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Let's talk about those. Harvard, right? Tell me, how exactly did you get in? Special programs? Scholarships for certain demographics? The implication hangs in the air between them. Nicholas stiffens but maintains his composure. I graduated top of my class. And yet you don't understand basic professional hierarchy. Trevor leans forward, palms flat on his desk. Let me be clear. You are here on probation. I need people who follow direction, not challenge authority. Trevor pulls a folder from his desk drawer and removes a printed assignment sheet. Since you need clarification on your role, I've prepared this for you. Nicholas scans the document. His jaw tightens almost imperceptibly as he reads his new assignments, reorganizing the supply closet, updating the office coffee schedule, cataloging old marketing materials from storage. These are intern tasks, Nicholas states, his voice level despite the obvious demotion. These are team support tasks, Trevor counters with a thin smile. Everyone contributes to the efficient operation of this department. Consider it an opportunity to demonstrate your adaptability. Nicholas stands, taking the assignment sheet. Will there be anything else? Yes, I expect this completed by end of day. Trevor's smile doesn't reach his eyes. And Nicholas? Next time you have a concern with my management, bring it to me privately. Not everyone appreciates your direct approach. Later, in the break room, Nicholas stands by the coffee machine, carefully updating the schedule as assigned. Through the open door, he clearly hears Trevor speaking to another manager in the hallway.
Had to put him in his place, Trevor says, not bothering to lower his voice. These entitlement attitudes are getting out of hand. They think just because they check a diversity box, they can skip the ladder. Tough position, the other manager responds. HR's always pushing these initiatives without considering team dynamics. Nicholas continues writing, his expression revealing nothing. Aisha appears beside him, her voice low. This is ridiculous. Let me help you with the storage room at least. Thank you, but no, Nicholas replies. Some battles you fight differently. That evening, Nicholas sits in his apartment, phone to his ear. Dad, I need access to the company's HR complaint history. This goes deeper than we thought. Richard Westfield's concerned face appears on the video call from his penthouse office. You should just let me end this experiment. I can transfer you to executive offices tomorrow. No, Nicholas responds firmly. That's not how real change happens. Trust me. I need 2 more weeks. Trevor's personnel file reveals a pattern that will transform Nicholas's strategy from personal vindication to systemic reform. Nicholas spends his evening reviewing Trevor's personnel history, obtained through his father's executive access. The digital files tell a disturbing story. 6 discrimination complaints over 15 years, all from employees of color or women who subsequently left the company. Each complaint shows the same pattern: initial documentation, perfunctory investigation, and eventual dismissal for insufficient evidence or misunderstanding of management style. The morning team meeting arrives with Nicholas prepared. He sits quietly as Trevor outlines the week's priorities, taking notes with practiced professionalism, despite having spent the night completing the demeaning tasks assigned to him. When Trevor opens the floor for input, Nicholas presents a comprehensive analysis of their struggling product line's market position. His approach blends current industry trends with Westfield's established strengths, identifying a clear opportunity their competitors have missed. His presentation is concise, data-driven, and compelling. The team responds with visible interest. Several colleagues nod appreciatively, and Aisha immediately begins asking insightful follow-up questions that strengthen the concept further. Trevor watches with thinning lips. That's an interesting academic exercise, he says when Nicholas finishes. Unfortunately, we need practical solutions, not theoretical models. I've included implementation steps and projected ROI on page 3, Nicholas responds, maintaining his professional tone. The approach is based on successful campaigns from Johnson & Williams last quarter. Trevor dismisses the team without addressing Nicholas's proposal further. We'll stick with our established strategy for now. Bradley, I'd like you to refine the luxury positioning we discussed yesterday. 2 hours later, Nicholas is organizing old brochures in the storage room when his phone buzzes with multiple messages from team members. Victor Menendez from accounts has texted, VP of Sales just arrived. Trevor presenting new strategy. You should see this. Nicholas returns to find Preston Williams, VP of Sales, enthusiastically reviewing presentation slides in the main conference room. As Nicholas quietly enters, he recognizes his own strategy being presented verbatim, but with Trevor standing proudly at the helm. This pivot from luxury positioning to innovation-focused messaging is exactly what we need, Preston says, examining the data Nicholas compiled. The customer segment analysis here is impressive. Who developed this? Trevor straightens slightly. It was my team's effort, but I guided the approach based on my experience with similar markets. Preston nods approvingly. Excellent work, Trevor. Let's fast-track this. I want implementation plans by Friday. After the VP leaves, Nicholas approaches Trevor privately in the hallway. That was my strategy you presented. Trevor scoffs, glancing around to ensure they're alone. Prove it. Your word against mine. His smirk shows complete confidence in his position. You should be grateful I found a use for your suggestion. Consider it a lesson in how things really work here. Nicholas's eyes narrow slightly. So the lesson is that stealing others' work is acceptable? Trevor's voice hardens. The lesson is knowing your place in the food chain. I decide what ideas go upstairs. You're still learning how things work in the real corporate world. Nicholas returns to his desk, opening a document titled Westfield Cultural Assessment, Marketing Department. He updates it methodically, noting the time, date, and exact dialogue of the interaction. The case Nicholas builds with each documented incident will soon become Trevor's professional death warrant. The following week brings increasingly blatant marginalization. Trevor removes Nicholas from the email chains for 2 client meetings. Important updates go to every team member except him. His desk is relocated during lunch, moved from the main area to a corner near the supply closet for space optimization. Nicholas adapts with quiet dignity. He arrives early each morning to review company communications he officially shouldn't have access to. He completes his assigned menial tasks efficiently, then produces exceptional strategic work that he carefully documents before submitting. The pattern becomes predictable. Nicholas creates comprehensive analyses that disappear into Trevor's office, only to emerge later as Trevor's own insights. Team members notice but remain silent, their careers held hostage by the same system. On Wednesday, Nicholas completes a detailed presentation for Apex Technologies, Westfield's largest potential client. The deck synthesizes months of market research into a compelling pitch tailored specifically to Apex's business model. Nicholas forwards it to Trevor as required, knowing what will follow. The next morning, Trevor calls a pre-meeting briefing. Bradley will be presenting to Apex today, he announces, handing out updated presentation materials. I've made some adjustments to strengthen our approach. Nicholas accepts the revised deck. His name has been removed completely. Bradley Wilson is now listed as the strategic lead. The content remains unchanged. Nicholas's work presented as someone else's. The Apex executives arrive at 11. Nicholas isn't invited to the meeting but positions himself near the conference room door, ostensibly organizing marketing materials on a nearby shelf. Through the glass, he watches the presentation unfold. The Apex CEO leans forward with interest as Bradley presents Nicholas's strategy. Questions follow, some technical and specific. Bradley stumbles, looking repeatedly to Trevor for help with concepts he didn't develop. The Apex CTO finally asks directly, "This consumer journey mapping is exceptional. Who specifically developed this approach? We'd like to work with them directly on implementation." Trevor smoothly steps forward. "Our team develops all strategies collaboratively, but I personally oversaw this particular framework based on my experience with similar markets." The lie flows effortlessly. Nicholas continues organizing materials, his expression neutral as he commits the moment to memory. After the successful meeting, the team celebrates in the break room. Nicholas approaches Bradley privately as others chat with Trevor across the room. "You knew that was my work," Nicholas says quietly. Bradley looks down at his coffee, shame evident in his posture. "I'm sorry. Trevor told me to take credit. He said if I didn't..." He trails off. "He threatened your position?" Nicholas asks. Bradley nods slightly. "He does this to everyone, but especially to people like..." He hesitates. "People like me," Nicholas finishes. That evening, Nicholas paces his apartment, phone pressed to his ear. "I need complete access to the company server," he tells his father. "There's a pattern of evidence I need to secure before it disappears." Richard sounds increasingly worried. "This has gone far enough. I'm coming to the office tomorrow." "No," Nicholas insists. "Not yet. Trust me, Dad. This isn't just about Trevor anymore. The problem is systemic." He ends the call and opens his laptop to a folder labeled Westfield Reform. Inside are dozens of documented incidents, testimonials from former employees he's tracked down, and a detailed analysis of promotion patterns across departments showing clear discrimination trends. Tomorrow's company-wide meeting will push Trevor to commit career suicide in front of the perfect witnesses. The quarterly review meeting brings unusual tension to Westfield Industries. Rumors circulate that Richard Westfield himself will attend a rare occurrence that has the executive team straightening ties and rehearsing presentations in hallways. Nicholas arrives early, dressed in his finest suit. The contrast between his professional appearance and the menial tasks Trevor has assigned him isn't lost on his colleagues. Several offer sympathetic glances as Nicholas sets up the conference room technology. Trevor enters with nervous energy, checking his reflection in the glass wall before approaching Nicholas. "Where's the executive coffee service?" he demands, voice tight. "I specifically told you to handle refreshments for today." Nicholas turns from the projection setup. "I prepared the presentation materials as you requested, but refreshments weren't on my assignment list." "Don't be obtuse," Trevor hisses. "I told you yesterday to handle refreshments." "You asked me to update the slides with the new projections," Nicholas corrects calmly, "which I completed last night." Trevor's face darkens. "Your role is whatever I say it is. Get the coffee service set up now before executives arrive." Instead, Nicholas takes a seat at the table, meeting portfolio open before him. "I'm a senior strategist, Mr. Matthews. That's my role according to HR and my contract. I've prepared for this meeting accordingly." Trevor's retort is interrupted as executives begin entering. The CEO's chair remains conspicuously empty as the CFO calls the meeting to order. Department heads present their quarterly results in turn. When marketing's slot arrives, Trevor showcases impressive strategies and performance metrics, all based on Nicholas's work. His confidence grows as he speaks, occasionally glancing at Nicholas with subtle triumph. The CFO interrupts with pointed questions about customer acquisition costs. Trevor falters, shuffling through his notes for data he doesn't fully understand. Nicholas raises his hand. When acknowledged by the CFO, he provides precise answers, explaining the methodology behind the calculations and offering additional context that impresses the executive team. Trevor attempts to reclaim control. "As I was explaining before the interruption." "Actually," the CFO interjects, "I'd like to hear more about these segmentation strategies. Nicholas, since you seem familiar with the data, could you elaborate?" Nicholas delivers a concise explanation that resolves the CFO's concerns. The other executives nod with approval. After the meeting, Trevor corners Nicholas in an empty conference room, closing the door with controlled force. "You humiliated me in front of the executive team," he says, voice vibrating with anger. Nicholas remains composed. "I answered questions about my own work." "Your work?" Trevor's volume rises. "Nothing here is your work. You exist in this company because I allow it." Nicholas maintains steady eye contact. "I've contributed significant value to this department, Mr. Matthews. The numbers speak for themselves." "Numbers?" Trevor laughs bitterly. "You think executives care about your numbers? This company runs on relationships you don't have and never will." Nicholas notices movement outside the glass walls. Several employees have paused, attention drawn by Trevor's increasing volume. Trevor, focused on his target, doesn't notice. "You need to know your place," Trevor continues, jabbing a finger toward Nicholas. "And what exactly is my place, Mr. Matthews?" Nicholas asks quietly. Trevor explodes. "Your place is to shut up, be grateful we hired you at all, and do what you're told. You think your fancy degrees change anything? You're here to fill a quota, nothing more." The gathered audience outside grows. Among them, Nicholas recognizes the HR director and the company's legal counsel. They exchange troubled glances as Trevor continues his tirade. Nicholas calmly collects his notes. "Thank you for making your perspective so clear." Trevor's public outburst has just sealed his fate in the most perfect way possible. Nicholas arrives at 7:15 the next morning, a full hour before standard office hours. He wears his most impressive suit charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes, paired with a deep blue tie that brings out the intensity in his eyes. He moves with purpose, making several calls from his desk in the empty office. By 8:30, team members begin filtering in. They cast curious glances at Nicholas, word of yesterday's confrontation having spread throughout the company. Many offer subtle nods of solidarity while carefully avoiding Trevor's office door. At precisely 9 o'clock, Trevor strides in. His face still carries yesterday's anger, now hardened into cold determination. He marches directly to Nicholas's desk and slaps down a formal document. "Sign this," he demands without preamble. "It details your insubordination and poor attitude. Consider it your first and final warning." Nicholas reads the letter carefully. It describes a fictitious pattern of disrespect, missed deadlines, and unprofessional behavior, a complete inversion of reality. "This isn't accurate," Nicholas states simply. Trevor leans closer. "Sign it or clean out your desk." "I think we should discuss this with HR present," Nicholas suggests, his voice measured. Trevor's laugh holds no humor. "HR works for the company, not for you. Sign it." Nicholas stands slowly, straightening to his full height. "You're right. HR does work for the company, and so do I." His voice shifts subtly, gaining an authority previously kept hidden. "But the question is, who exactly is the company?" Confusion flickers across Trevor's face as Nicholas walks past him toward the department's central area. Raising his voice slightly, Nicholas addresses the room. "Attention, everyone. I have an announcement." The team gathers, curious and wary. Trevor attempts to intervene, but Nicholas continues with such natural authority that Trevor's words die in his throat. "For the past month, I've been conducting a cultural assessment of Westfield Industries at the request of the CEO," Nicholas begins, his tone shifting from subordinate to executive. "My name is Nicholas Westfield Turner. Richard Westfield is my father." The revelation lands like a thunderclap. Gasps and wide eyes sweep the room. Trevor's face drains of color so rapidly he seems to age a decade in seconds. "I was placed in this department without special treatment to experience our company culture firsthand," Nicholas continues. "What I've found is both encouraging and deeply troubling." He walks toward the team, acknowledging individual members. "Most of you have shown remarkable professionalism, creativity, and integrity despite challenging circumstances. Aisha, your research methodology is impeccable. Victor, your financial analyses have saved this company millions. Bradley," he pauses, meeting the young man's anxious gaze, "you have genuine talent when you're allowed to use it." Nicholas's tone shifts. "Unfortunately, I've also documented systematic discrimination, idea theft, and abusive management practices." With practiced calm, he connects his tablet to the conference room display. The screen fills with email threads, performance reviews, and complaint records, all highlighting Trevor's pattern of discrimination and abuse. "This behavior violates not just our company values, but federal employment law," Nicholas states. "And it ends today." Trevor finds his voice, though it wavers. "This is ridiculous. You can't just waltz in undercover and—" "Actually," Nicholas interrupts smoothly, "as principal shareholder and designated executive assessor, I can. The board approved this evaluation 6 months ago after receiving troubling reports about our company culture." As if on cue, the department doors open. Richard Westfield enters, flanked by Elaine Peterson from HR and a woman in a crisp suit carrying a legal portfolio. Richard approaches, his presence commanding immediate respect. "Trevor Matthews, you're suspended pending investigation. Please surrender your company access and come with HR." Trevor looks wildly around the room, seeking allies and finding none. "You can't. I've been loyal for 20 years. This is entrapment." "No," Nicholas says quietly. "It's accountability. Everything you've done was of your own choice without coercion. You showed us exactly who you are." Trevor's face contorts with rage and disbelief as he turns to Richard. "This was a setup. He provoked me deliberately." "Did he provoke you to steal his work?" Richard asks coldly. "Did he provoke you to discriminate against employees for years? Did he force you to create a hostile work environment?" Security personnel appear at the door. Trevor's shoulders slump as the reality of his situation becomes inescapable. As they escort Trevor out, Nicholas addresses the stunned team. "Change begins today. I'll be working directly with all of you to rebuild this department based on merit, respect, and inclusion. The team erupts in spontaneous applause, tentative at first, then building to genuine enthusiasm. Years of accumulated fear and frustration release in the cathartic moment. Nicholas makes eye contact with Aisha, who mouths a silent "thank you" across the room. The exposure of Trevor's behavior is just the first domino in a company-wide reckoning. The fallout from Trevor's removal ripples through Westfield Industries with unprecedented speed. Nicholas temporarily relocates to an office adjacent to the marketing department rather than immediately claiming Trevor's space, a symbolic gesture not lost on the team. He makes a point of returning to the main floor regularly, maintaining the connections he built during his undercover work. 3 days after Trevor's departure, the board of directors convenes for an emergency session. The atmosphere in the wood-paneled boardroom is tense as 12 executives sit around the massive table, eyes fixed on Richard and Nicholas Westfield. This investigation was conducted without board approval. Harrison Blackwell, the longest-serving member, protests. We have protocols for addressing personnel issues. Nicholas slides folders to each board member. These are the same protocols that buried 6 discrimination complaints against Trevor Matthews over 15 years. He responds calmly. The same protocols that saw 14 qualified employees of color or women leave the company after being passed over for promotions they deserved. One problematic manager doesn't indicate a systemic issue, argues Victoria Reeves, CFO. Trevor's behavior, while concerning, appears to be an isolated incident. Nicholas taps his tablet and the wall screen fills with meticulously organized data. Respectfully, the evidence suggests otherwise. He walks them through promotion statistics, complaint patterns, and exit interview data across departments. This isn't about one manager. It's about a culture that enabled him and others like him. Several board members shift uncomfortably as their department's metrics appear on screen. The patterns are undeniable consistent biases in hiring, promotion, and resource allocation throughout the company. What exactly are you proposing? Asks Lawrence Chen, the youngest board member. A complete cultural audit and reform, Nicholas answers. Transparent reporting structures, anonymous feedback channels, and accountability at every level, including this boardroom. The debate continues for hours. Eventually, faced with both moral and legal exposure, the board reluctantly authorizes a company-wide investigation. Across town, Trevor Matthews sits in his attorney's office, rage barely contained beneath his practiced corporate veneer. This is textbook wrongful termination, insists James Harrington, his lawyer. They created a hostile situation deliberately to force a reaction. We have grounds for a substantial lawsuit. I want damages, Trevor seethes. I built that department. 20 years of my life dedicated to Westfield, and they send security to escort me out like a criminal. We'll file immediately, Harrington assures him. Your reputation alone should be worth millions in damages. Their confidence evaporates the following week when Westfield's legal team responds with a devastating counteroffensive. The company delivers 3 boxes of documented evidence. Emails where Trevor explicitly blocked qualified minorities from promotion. Testimonies from former employees who left due to his discrimination. Performance reviews where nearly identical work received dramatically different ratings based on the employee's race or gender. Most damaging is an email Trevor sent to a fellow director 3 years earlier. Between us, I'm holding off on Sarah's promotion again. She's qualified. But do we really want another woman in executive meetings? They change the dynamic, and not in a good way. Let's find a reason to delay until Jenkins is ready. Harrington reviews the evidence with growing dismay. They've been building this case for years. That's impossible, Trevor protests. This is about that undercover stunt Nicholas pulled. No, Harrington says grimly. His investigation just uncovered what was already there. They have documentation dating back a decade. He closes the file. You need to consider a settlement. Taking this to court would be suicide. Trevor refuses to concede. That night, he attempts to access the Westfield servers remotely using his old credentials. The system logs the attempt instantly, adding another violation to his growing file. 2 days later, he calls a former subordinate, leaving a voicemail that borders on threatening, demanding they speak in his defense. The employee immediately forwards the message to HR. Meanwhile, Nicholas implements immediate changes in the marketing department. He establishes blind review processes for all creative work, removing names before evaluation. Meeting minutes are recorded and distributed to ensure proper attribution of ideas. Every team member receives equal opportunity to lead projects based on their expertise, rather than seniority or personal relationships. We're not just fixing one department, Nicholas explains during a team meeting. We're creating a model that will be implemented company-wide. The transformation isn't without challenges. Some longtime employees resist the new transparency, comfortable with the old hierarchies. Others worry about maintaining productivity during the transition. Nicholas addresses each concern directly, demonstrating that merit-based systems ultimately produce better results. 3 weeks into the reform, a young graphic designer approaches Nicholas as he reviews campaign materials. "I need to tell you something," she says hesitantly. "If I had known who you were, I would have said something about how Trevor treated people, especially Aisha and Victor." Nicholas sets aside the materials to give her his full attention. "That's exactly why I couldn't tell anyone. Real change doesn't come from fear of authority. It comes from choosing to do right when you think no one important is watching." The designer nods slowly. "I'll remember that." Across the industry, news of Westfield's internal investigation spreads through professional networks. Initial stock volatility stabilizes as market analysts recognize the long-term benefits of the company's transparency. 2 competing corporations quietly launch their own cultural assessments, fearing similar issues might be exposed within their ranks. By the 6-week mark, Nicholas has interviewed every member of the marketing team individually, identifying both problems and opportunities previously hidden by Trevor's management style. Talented individuals who had been marginalized now lead key initiatives. Collaborative sessions generate stronger ideas than the previous top-down approach. Richard joins Nicholas for lunch in the company cafeteria, a location deliberately chosen for its visibility. "The board's still nervous," Richard admits. "Cultural change makes people uncomfortable." "Necessary change often does," Nicholas responds. "But the numbers are already improving. Team productivity is up 12%. Absenteeism is down. 2 former employees have asked to return." Richard studies his son with pride. "You could have just taken over. Made yourself director and issued new policies. Then we'd just be replacing one authority figure with another," Nicholas explains. "The system itself would remain broken. Real change requires exposing the root problems so everyone understands why reform matters." As they finish lunch, employees throughout the cafeteria notice something remarkable. The CEO and his son clearing their own trays, thanking the kitchen staff by name. Small gestures that signal the cultural shift has reached the highest levels. Trevor's final hearing approaches, carrying consequences that will extend far beyond one man's career. The disciplinary hearing convenes on a rainy Tuesday morning in Westfield's executive boardroom. The space has been arranged like a courtroom, a long table where board members sit as de facto judges, smaller tables for the opposing parties, and chairs along the perimeter for witnesses and observers. Trevor arrives precisely on time, accompanied by James Harrington and a junior attorney carrying multiple binders of documentation. Despite the circumstances, Trevor projects confidence in an expensive new suit, his handshake firm as he greets former colleagues with practiced cordiality. Nicholas sits at the opposite table with the company's legal counsel, his posture relaxed yet alert. Richard takes his place at the center of the board table, but recuses himself from voting due to personal involvement, designating the CFO as acting chair for the proceedings. This hearing will determine whether Trevor Matthews' termination for cause is justified based on evidence of workplace discrimination idea theft, and creation of a hostile work environment, the CFO announces, opening the session. Mr. Harrington, you may present your client's defense. Trevor's attorney rises, buttoning his jacket with theatrical precision. Members of the board, what we have here is nothing less than an elaborate entrapment scheme designed to remove a loyal 20-year veteran of this company. His voice rises with practiced indignation. Mr. Turner deliberately concealed his identity, provoked responses, and manufactured situations to build a false narrative against my client. Nicholas remains impassive as Harrington continues. Furthermore, this entire investigation was conducted without proper oversight or transparency. Mr. Matthews had no opportunity to address concerns before being publicly humiliated and escorted from the premises. The board listens attentively, several members nodding at points that align with corporate tradition. When Harrington concludes, Nicholas's attorney presents the company's evidence, methodically emails, performance reviews, witness statements, and statistical analyses of Trevor's promotion decisions, showing clear discriminatory patterns. Mr. Matthews was never asked to discriminate, steal ideas, or abuse his authority, she emphasizes. He chose those actions freely, consistently, over many years. Mr. Turner's presence simply documented what was already occurring. Trevor requests permission to speak directly to the board. When granted, he stands, smoothing his tie with practiced precision. I've dedicated 20 years of my life to Westfield Industries, he begins, his voice modulated to convey sincerity. Have I been demanding? Yes. Our industry requires excellence. Have I maintained high standards? Absolutely. He paces slightly, establishing command of the space. What's being characterized as discrimination was simply meritocracy. The best ideas and the hardest workers were rewarded, regardless of background. Trevor portrays himself as an old-school manager navigating increasingly sensitive workplace politics. Frankly, what some call abuse used to be called leadership. Not everyone responds well to direct feedback. That doesn't make it discrimination. He turns toward Nicholas. As for Mr. Turner's allegations, consider his methods. He arrived with an agenda, deliberately provoked confrontations, and recorded private conversations without consent. Is that the behavior of someone seeking truth or someone manufacturing evidence? Several board members exchange thoughtful glances. For a moment, the room's energy shifts in Trevor's favor. Nicholas doesn't argue or interrupt. Instead, when Trevor finishes, he connects his tablet to the room's display system. Actions speak louder than words, Nicholas says simply. I'd like to show you what Mr. Matthews' leadership looked like in practice. The screen fills with video testimonials from former employees who left because of Trevor's discrimination. A black woman describes being passed over for promotion 7 times despite consistently outperforming colleagues who advanced. An Indian engineer explains how Trevor reassigned his successful project to a less qualified white colleague days before an executive presentation. A young Latino marketing specialist recounts being told his accent was too distracting for client meetings. Their stories form a damning pattern spanning years. Trevor's expression hardens as he recognizes former subordinates he believed would never speak against him. The final evidence proves most devastating. An email Trevor sent to a department manager 3 years earlier regarding a potential promotion. Between us, I'd hold off on advancing Larissa despite her numbers. She's got the skills but wouldn't fit our executive image. Find someone more traditional. You know what I mean. Trevor's attorney attempts damage control, offering to negotiate a resignation agreement with a mutual non-disclosure provision. Nicholas rises slowly. No more silence. No more NDAs hiding discrimination. He turns directly to Trevor. You told me to know my place. Now it's time you learned yours. The board votes with minimal deliberation. Termination with cause, forfeiture of all unvested stock options and retirement packages, and full cooperation with any employees pursuing civil cases. As security waits to escort him from the building for the final time, Trevor approaches Nicholas, his voice low and bitter. You had every advantage, the Westfield name, connections, wealth. You set me up to fail. Nicholas meets his gaze steadily. No, Trevor. You set yourself up to fail the moment you decided some people deserve less dignity than others. Trevor exits the Westfield building for the last time, his 20-year career ending in disgrace. Outside, rain washes away the last vestiges of his corporate power. Trevor's downfall becomes the catalyst for change reaching far beyond one company's walls. 6 months transform Westfield Industries. The marketing department, once Trevor's fiefdom, now serves as the company's innovation hub under Nicholas's leadership as Chief Culture Officer, a position created alongside his continued role in marketing strategy. The physical space reflects the philosophical shift. Gone are the isolated offices that previously separated management from staff. The floor now features collaborative spaces with glass-walled meeting rooms, ensuring transparency in both literal and figurative senses. Employee achievements plaster the walls, each credited specifically to their creators, regardless of title or tenure. More significant than physical changes are the systemic reforms implemented throughout the company. Anonymous reporting systems now operate through third-party oversight, eliminating the previous pattern of buried complaints. Every allegation receives thorough investigation with published results, names redacted but outcomes transparent. Promotion and project assignment processes undergo blind review work, evaluated without names or identifying characteristics until final stages. The resulting diversity in leadership positions occurs naturally through merit rather than mandated quotas. Regular culture audits occur quarterly, with results shared company-wide and specific accountability metrics tied to executive compensation. Teams exceeding inclusion benchmarks while maintaining performance standards receive innovation budgets previously unavailable to them. Mandatory inclusive leadership training begins at onboarding and continues throughout every employee's career. Unlike previous superficial diversity initiatives, these programs focus on practical scenarios and measurable outcomes, rather than theoretical compliance. Exit interviews conducted by independent consultants provide unfiltered feedback that shapes ongoing reforms. Several former employees who left under Trevor's regime returned to the company in improved positions, their talents finally recognized and rewarded. The ripple effects spread beyond Westfield's walls. 2 competing companies implement similar reforms after losing talent to Westfield's increasingly attractive culture. Industry publications feature case studies of the company's transformation, highlighting both moral and business benefits of authentic inclusion. At an industry conference, Nicholas participates in a panel discussion titled Transparent Accountability: The Business Case for Inclusive Leadership. Executives from across the sector fill the room, many taking notes as Nicholas shares specific policies and their measurable results. Our productivity has increased 17%, he explains to the attentive audience. Retention improved by 23%. These aren't soft metrics, they translate directly to profitability. The company's stock rises 15% as talent acquisition improves and innovation accelerates. Analysts attribute the growth directly to cultural reforms that unleashed previously suppressed potential throughout the organization. In Richard's CEO office, father and son review quarterly results with satisfaction. The board is finally convinced, Richard notes. The numbers made believers out of even the most skeptical members. Nicholas nods. Data helps, but the real difference is in the energy. You can feel it walking through departments now. Richard studies his son thoughtfully. You could have handled this privately, taken over the department without the undercover work, implemented the same changes. Then nothing would have really changed, Nicholas responds. Trevor would have been removed, but the system that protected him would remain. Real change happens when problems can't hide in the shadows. Richard smiles with unmistakable pride. You'll make a better CEO than I ever was. The marketing department now leads the company in both productivity and innovation, with the lowest turnover across all divisions. Morning meetings buzz with energy as team members from diverse backgrounds contribute ideas without fear of theft or dismissal. Projects progress efficiently without the artificial hierarchies that previously stifled creativity. Most telling is a simple moment. Aisha, now marketing director, presenting a bold campaign concept to the executive team. The room falls silent when she finishes, not with dismissal, but with appreciation for excellence. 1 year after confronting Trevor, Nicholas faces a decision that will define not just his career, but his legacy. 1 year after Trevor Matthews' removal, Westfield Industries holds its annual company meeting in the expansive central atrium. Nearly 800 employees gather in concentric circles around a simple podium. The space hums with anticipation rather than the dutiful obligation that characterized previous years' gatherings. Nicholas stands among the crowd rather than on the executive platform, conversing easily with employees from various departments. The changes in company culture manifest in everything from the diverse leadership team now visible on stage to the relaxed confidence with which staff approach executives with questions and ideas. Richard Westfield opens the proceedings with brief remarks before introducing his son. Nicholas steps onto the platform, his presence now commanding respect earned through action rather than inherited authority. 1 year ago, I experienced Westfield's culture from a perspective most executives never see. Nicholas begins. That experience transformed not just my understanding of our company, but my vision for what corporate culture should be. The presentation screen behind him displays the remarkable metrics of their transformation. Employee satisfaction scores doubled, innovation submissions increased threefold, market share growth outpacing competitors by significant margins. Today, I'm announcing a new initiative, Nicholas continues, his voice strong and clear. The Know Your Place program. A ripple of reaction passes through the audience at the loaded phrase, faces registering surprise and curiosity. For too long, these words have been used to limit potential and enforce hierarchy, Nicholas acknowledges. Today, we reclaim them. To know your place means understanding your value. It means recognizing the unique perspective you bring. It means standing in your truth. The screen transitions to details of the new program: comprehensive mentorship opportunities, leadership training, and advancement pathways specifically designed for employees from underrepresented groups. The initiative will pair promising talent with executive sponsors, creating relationships that transcend traditional corporate boundaries. This isn't about preferential treatment, Nicholas clarifies. It's about dismantling the invisible barriers that have prevented true meritocracy. It's about ensuring everyone's place in this company is determined by their contribution, not their conformity. From her position near the front, Aisha nods in approval. As marketing director, she's already implemented similar principles within her team, creating one of the most innovative departments in the company. Nicholas concludes with reflective sincerity. A year ago, I was told to know my place. It was meant to diminish me, to remind me of arbitrary boundaries. But here's what I've learned. Your place is not determined by others' limitations. Your place is where your talent, passion, and integrity lead you. The company rises in a standing ovation that continues long after Nicholas steps away from the microphone. Later that week, Nicholas speaks at a local university's business ethics symposium. After his presentation, a student approaches with the question many have wondered, but few have directly asked. Was the undercover approach really necessary? Couldn't you have made the same changes as an executive? Nicholas considers the question thoughtfully. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Power often conceals its true nature from those who hold it. Sometimes the only way to see the truth is to change your perspective. Across town, Trevor Matthews sits alone in his home office. His new position at a much smaller company carries a fraction of his former authority and compensation. On his computer screen plays a business news segment featuring Nicholas discussing Westfield's transformation and industry-leading practices. Trevor studies his former subordinate's confident demeanor with complex emotions crossing his face. After a moment, he turns off the monitor, the reflection in the darkened screen showing a man confronting the consequences of his choices. In Richard's office at Westfield headquarters, the CEO nameplate has been modified to include both Westfield and Turner. Nicholas examines it with quiet satisfaction as he joins his father for their weekly strategy meeting. On his desk sits a small engraved plaque, a gift from the marketing team. Your place is where you choose to stand. If you've enjoyed this story of justice and transformation, make sure you're part of our Beat Stories community. Hit that subscribe button right now to never miss our weekly episodes of workplace justice and powerful comebacks. And if this story resonated with you, smash that like button to help more people discover these important lessons. At Beat Stories, we're building the largest community of justice seekers online. Join us by subscribing today.